November 12, 2006. Bogdanovich, Sverdlovsk region, Russia. It's Sunday, market day, and the local residents are hurrying to the central market to buy everything they need for the week. Neighbors Grigory Ilyin and Ilshat Fayzulin, names changed, also decide to take a walk to the market. Their wives wrote them long shopping lists. Today they plan to spend a lot. The men decide to take a shortcut and walk through the yard of the local school. A pit for the swimming pool was dug there several months ago, but now the construction is definitely on hold until summer. Fayzulin lights a cigarette while telling his neighbor about his car that recently broke down. Ilyin nods sympathetically. The men walk unhurriedly, so as they pass by the pit, they immediately take notice. They notice an oddly shaped object lying on the frost-covered ground. The object looks like a large doll, with dark hair spread out on the ground, naked from the waist down, so that the bruises on the thighs and the pedicure on the toes are visible. Fayzulin drops his cigarette when he realizes what kind of doll it is. In front of them, at the bottom of the pit, caught by the morning frost, lies the body of a dead girl. While Ilyin, who happened to have a cell phone with him, calls an ambulance and the police, he tries not to look in that direction. He can't even cover the girl's naked body with anything. The officer who took the call said that the body must not be touched. Until the police arrive, the body of 18-year-old Yana Nefantova has to lie defenseless in the pit under the gaze of onlookers. Yana Nefantova was born in 1988 in Bogdanovich, a quiet town in the Sverdlovsk region. Founded in the 19th century as a railway settlement, it has always moved at a slow provincial pace. The long whistle from the local porcelain factory in the mornings, the smell of fresh buns from the bakery on the main street, and endless conversations with neighbors across backyard fences. The town was small, with a population of only 30,000 people. Rumors spread instantly, and it was almost impossible to keep secrets. Yana was the youngest in the family. Her brother Maxim was 6 years older than her. Точненько 8 лет. From the very beginning, he took on the role of his sister's protector, and the one who was always getting things started. The Nefantov family was close-knit and warm. Their father worked at a factory. Their mother skillfully kept the home cozy, and their small house always smelled of pies. Little Yana was spoiled. She was a long-awaited child. If she wanted ice cream, she got it, even in winter. If she asked to go outside in the rain, they put bright raincoats on her and let her jump in puddles. Maxim adored his little sister. They were inseparable. In the summer, they spent all their time at the river, building rafts and catching tadpoles. In the winter, they rode sleds down the hill. When Yana turned 8, a new regular guest appeared in their lives. One day, Maxim brought home his friend, a tall, strong guy, Andrey Ryzhkov. "This is Andryuha, we're in the same crew," he said. Maxim said, sounding important. Andrey was 16. At first, Yana was shy and often just ran to her bedroom when the guy came to visit. But he didn't brush off the little kid and was friendly. Gradually, the girl warmed up to him and started to think of Andrey almost as her older brother. And in the Nefantov family, Ryzhkov soon became one of their own. He was invited to dinner, Lyudmila would ruffle his hair while giving him seconds, and even the father would use him as an example for Maxim. "Look, Max, Andryuha is a serious guy, he wants to join the military, while all you think about is girls." Later, Lyudmila would say that Ryzhkov was almost like a son to her. Years went by, Yana grew up, turning from a cheerful little girl into a confident young woman. Barbie dolls and toy tea sets gave way to other interests. Discos at the local community center, where it smelled of cheap perfume and alcohol. The first cigarettes behind the garages. Long walks through the evening park in the city center. Maxim still brought his sister to his group of friends, and Yana quickly fit in. Beautiful, headstrong, with a spark in her eyes, she no longer hid behind her brother. And Andrey Ryzhkov was always somewhere nearby. He was already a grown guy, noticed how Yana was blossoming and couldn't ignore it. Yana saw that Andrey liked her. It was clear in the way he looked at her just a bit longer than necessary, in how he would casually touch her shoulder when handing her a bottle of soda, or when walking beside her, seeing her home. To her, just a girl until recently, it was flattering in a way. Ryzhkov was older, more serious, with that calm confidence that is so attractive to girls. Maxim, on the other hand, seemed not to notice his friend's interest in his sister. For him, Andrycha remained Andrycha, and Yana was just his little sister, a girl who definitely couldn't interest his grown-up friend. When Ryzhkov went off to fight in Chechnya, Yana, as well as the entire Nefantov family, waited for his return and worried about him. After returning from the conflict zone, Andrey Ryzhkov met a girl named Olga, and it became clear that their relationship was serious. And in the fall, a wedding invitation arrived in the Nefantov family's mailbox. As expected, the whole family attended the celebration. Lyudmila Nefantova cried as she hugged the man she considered her second son, and the newlyweds were showered with congratulations. Yana also hugged the bride and groom. Olga was a good-natured and cheerful girl, and Yana quickly became friends with her. Both she and Maxim were frequent guests at the Ryzhkov's house, and when Yana had a fight with her first boyfriend, Olga comforted her and gave her advice. After finishing school, Yana packed her things and left for Yekaterinburg to apply to college. The big city greeted her with the noise of trolleybuses, the smell of wet asphalt after the rain, and a sense of freedom. It seemed that her naive childhood was somewhere behind her now. Of course, she heard news from home. Someone got married, someone got divorced. Andrey Ryzhkov had a little baby. The Ryzhkov family seemed happy. Maxim, who still lived in his hometown of Bogdanovich, continued to keep in touch with his childhood friend and told his sister about his life. While studying, Yana sometimes came home. It was less than 100 kilometers by road from Yekaterinburg to her hometown. A bus or a minibus, and in an hour or an hour and a half, you already see the familiar factory chimneys and grey 5-story buildings. At home, Mom was always waiting with pies and news from the local gossips. Friends would gather quickly. Someone brought beer, another brought sunflower seeds, and then the usual would start. We would gossip about mutual acquaintances, talk about matters of the heart, and spare no one. One day, at the beginning of autumn, Yana was walking to the store for bread and milk when someone called out to her on the street. The voice was so familiar, it gave her goosebumps. "Yan, how are you?" She turned around. Andrey Ryzhkov was standing by the entrance in his dark windbreaker, his hands in his pockets. He looked almost the same as before, just a bit broader in the shoulders and with shadows under his eyes. Yana approached with a smile and they hugged, then started talking. At first, they talked about trivial things, how studies were going, the weather, how Maxim was doing. Andrey suggested they walk together since he was also heading to the store. Yana agreed. They walked along the familiar sidewalk where they used to hang out together with friends. Fallen leaves crunched under their feet, and the air smelled of damp earth and exhaust fumes. "I missed you," Ryzhkov suddenly said, staring straight ahead. He was silent for a moment, then broke the silence in a tone that made her freeze. "You've become quite a beauty, Yan. I can't take my eyes off you." Yana felt her face instantly flush with heat. She lowered her eyes to her shoes. Andrey looked at her openly, admiring her the way a man looks at a woman, not at his friend's younger sister. "Oh, come on." "What, was I not pretty before?" She laughed, trying to turn the awkwardness into a joke. The words caught in her throat. Everything inside was a mess. An old, long-buried feeling of being flattered and a sharp, unpleasant realization. He's married, he has a family. And Olga probably wouldn't like it if her husband was giving compliments to another woman. They walked to the store in silence. Andrey bought cigarettes, she bought bread and milk. At the exit, he lightly touched her shoulder in farewell. Don't disappear, Jan, we'll see each other again. And he left. Maybe if Andrey wasn't married, Yana would have seen everything differently. After all, he was still a friend of her family, and they had a lot in common. Maybe she liked Andrey, and maybe she was even in love with him. This version would later be put forward by Ryzhkov himself. But he had a wife, a small child whom she rocked in her arms. Yana would never have dated a married man. After returning home, the girl sat in silence for a long time, looking at the old posters on the wall and childhood photos on the shelf. Her heart was beating heavily and unevenly. She herself didn't understand why those few words had affected her so much. Later, Yana ran into Andrey several more times on the streets of Bogdanovich, just like that, without his wife and child, alone. The town was small, so it was hard to avoid accidental encounters. Each time, he smiled as if there was some shared secret between them. Every time he complimented her. Ryzhkov of course knew Yana's phone number and sometimes texted her. The messages didn't come often, but they were regular. Maybe we can sit in a cafe today. I'll be in town tomorrow. Can I stop by? Let's meet downtown, like we used to. Yana would stare at the screen for a long time and then delete the text messages one by one. She was afraid that her mom and brother would accidentally see the message when she came home. Her mom definitely wouldn't approve, and Maxim would probably just tear her friend's head off. But it was impossible to avoid seeing him. Ryzhkov and her brother were still friends, and Yana also kept up the appearance of friendship. She still went to the Ryzhkov's house to look after little Sonia, their dog. Tonya even helped the Ryzhkovs with renovations. She put up wallpaper and painted pipes. Only when she returned to Ekaterinburg did she feel at peace. There, in the big city, among lectures, new friends and student hustle and bustle, Andrey seemed distant and almost unreal. But here, in Bogdanovich, his persistence felt stronger. Yana herself wasn't sure what she wanted. Maybe she was afraid she wouldn't be able to withstand this quiet pressure. Or maybe she didn't see Ryzhkov as a potential suitor at all. After all, it's one thing to hear flattering words and quite another to sneak around behind his wife's back and have an affair. One evening, when Yana was sitting in a cafe with her friend happened to notice a dozen missed calls from the same number on the girl's phone. "Who keeps calling you so persistently? Why aren't you answering?" her friend asked with curiosity. Yana felt her cheeks instantly flush. She shrugged, trying to sound as indifferent as possible. "It's just some guy bothering me. I can't seem to get rid of him." She didn't dare mention Ryzhkov's name. In a small town, gossip spreads instantly. They would talk about both her and him, and that's exactly what Yana didn't want. She remembered how mercilessly her friends branded the lovers of local married men, the words they used to describe them. "No, it's better to keep quiet." Her friend snorted. "I understand. Some people just can't take no for an answer. Just block him, let him text all he wants." "Yeah, looks like I'll have to." Yana agreed, and they changed the subject. What Yana really felt at that moment, no one will ever know. Was her irritation with Ryzhkov's persistence real, or was it all more complicated and unclear? On November 11, 2006, Yana Nefantova came to Bogdanovich to visit her parents. It was a typical late autumn day, grey, damp, with a light frost that made the asphalt slippery and shiny. She had arranged in advance to meet her friends in the evening, downtown, in the town square. The girls were happy. Yana always brought fresh stories about student life from Ekaterinburg, new songs on her phone. Yes, those were the days, and the glamour of the big city, something their small town sorely lacked. They planned to just walk around, gossip, and maybe stop by a cafe. At home, Yana quickly changed after the trip, swapped her sweater for her favorite blouse, put on some makeup, and sprayed on perfume. Her mother, as always, tried to feed her dinner, but Yana just waved her off. "I don't want any, I'm already running late. And I'll be home late. Don't wait up for me. I'm with the girls." She kissed her mother on the cheek, slipped out the door, and ran lightly down the stairs. That was the last time Lyudmila Nefantova saw her daughter alive. Her friends waited for Yana at the agreed spot by the fountain in the center until late in the evening. At first they weren't worried, and Yana could have just stayed home a bit longer, talking with her parents. She'll come, her friends were sure. But time passed, and the girl still hadn't shown up. Besides, she wasn't answering her phone or replying to texts. Maybe something happened at home? Maybe one of the Nefantovs got sick. In the end, one of Yana's friends called her home phone. Yana's mother, Lyudmila, answered the phone, and after hearing the girl's question, she was surprised and worried. No, Yana had left a long time ago.
Yana is on her way to you.
The friends exchanged glances. They didn't want to believe anything bad. Yana is an adult. She has her own personal life. Maybe she has a date with some secret admirer that no one knew about. The girls decided to walk towards Yana's house, hoping they would see her somewhere along the way. They walked through familiar dark alleys, looked into courtyards, called her again and again, but Yana seemed to have vanished into thin air. Soon her phone was completely turned off. Night came, but Yana was still nowhere to be found. An anxious silence filled the Nefantov family home. Lyudmila Mikhailovna kept going to the window, peering into the empty street. The kettle had cooled down several times already. She kept telling herself that her daughter was already grown up, 18 years old, not a child. Maybe she stayed over at some guy's place. Maybe she made up with her ex. But a mother's heart can't be fooled. Something was wrong. There was no good news in the morning. On the contrary, it only got worse. Yana still hadn't come home, and it was becoming clear that something had happened. Lyudmila waited for her daughter until lunchtime, constantly reaching for the phone. Yana's older brother Maxim also called everyone he could. Friends, acquaintances, former classmates, he even called Andrey Ryzhkov. But no one had seen Yana since yesterday evening. "We need to go look for her," the guy said resolutely. He got into the car and started methodically driving around the city. First, he followed the route Yana usually took from downtown to home. Then he checked all the cafes and spots where they used to hang out with their usual group. At the establishments, he showed a photo of his sister on his phone. The staff frowned and shook their heads. No, someone like that definitely hasn't been here. With each passing hour, a cold and clammy fear grew inside Maxim. He knew his sister. Yana could be stubborn. She could stay out late and come home in the early morning. She might not call on principal if she had argued with their mother. But to just disappear like that for no reason, without a single word, without a note, without a call, that was nothing like her. The search route led Maxim to a school not far from home. It was a typical school, the one where he and Yana went to school. It turned out he had graduated from there so long ago. Noticing something unusual, Maxim slowed down. A small crowd of about 20 or 30 people had gathered a little away from the building. People were shifting from foot to foot, craning their necks, quietly talking to each other. One of the policemen in uniform was persistently asking them to move further away. "Citizens, please don't interfere with our work." Maxim couldn't see exactly what was happening behind the crowd, but suddenly a sharp, lingering sense of impending trouble pierced his heart. Police, a crowd. It was clearly not just a fight between teenagers. He abruptly stopped the car by the roadside, turned off the engine, and almost ran toward the crowd. The onlookers, seeing the anxious young man, eagerly started talking over each other, saying that a body had been found in the pit behind the school. A girl, very young, is lying there almost naked. Can you imagine how horrible that is? They say her head was smashed in. Terrible. The words hit Maxim right in the heart. He felt a chill inside, and it became hard to breathe. A body, a girl, almost undressed. He stubbornly pushed away the terrible thought that it could be Yana. No, it can't be, not her, he repeated to himself like a prayer. Unable to stand there any longer, Maxim almost ran back to the car. His hands were shaking as he put the key in the ignition. He drove around the city for a while longer, almost at random, mechanically, without any real hope. But he couldn't find Yana. When it got dark, Maxim finally went home. There was light in the windows. His mother was waiting. As soon as he got out of the car, Lyudmila Ivanovna appeared on the porch. One look at her son was enough. "You didn't find him," she said quietly. Maxim sighed heavily. "No, I drove everywhere. I didn't see him anywhere." Once inside the house, he told his mother what he had seen at the school, about the crowd. About the words of the onlookers. About the pit. The woman's face instantly turned pale. She grabbed the door frame with her hand to keep from falling. Her eyes became huge, full of terror. "No, not my girl," she whispered quietly. There was silence for a few seconds. Then Lyudmila straightened up sharply, as if she had gathered her last strength. "We need to call the police," she said, and resolutely went to the living room where the home phone was. Her fingers fumbled as she dialed the number. The duty officer, after listening to the woman's confused request, confirmed. "This afternoon, in the pit near the school, they dug it for a swimming pool. They really did find the body of a young woman. About 18 years old, with signs of a natural death." "What did your daughter look like?" the duty officer asked Lyudmila. The woman, barely able to keep her voice from trembling, hurriedly began to describe her daughter's features. Long dark hair, brown eyes, height, the clothes Yana was wearing when she left last night. That was a worn jacket, jeans and sneakers. There was a short, very heavy pause on the other end of the line. Finally, they told her to come for identification. "It might really be your daughter." The words sounded like a verdict. Gathering the last of her courage, Lyudmila went to the local morgue. Maxim wanted to go with her, but she insisted that he stay home. What if Yana showed up after all? The trip took only 10 minutes, but it felt like an eternity to her. In the cold, formalin-scented room, she was met by an employee in a white coat. He silently pulled back the sheet. The very first glance made Lyudmila stagger. She clutched her heart as if someone had squeezed it tightly in their fist. Her legs gave way. It was Yana, her little girl, her youngest, headstrong, beloved daughter. Her face was pale, lifeless, with dried blood on her temple. Too calm, too unfamiliar. The woman didn't scream, she just stood there and stared, as if trying to convince herself that this was a terrible dream. Only a quiet, muffled moan escaped her throat. The morgue staff gently supported her by the arms so she wouldn't fall. She was told the little that had already been determined. The cause of death was brain damage. The girl had an open traumatic brain injury. The perpetrator struck her on the side, in the parietal temporal area, with a heavy, blunt object. It was also determined that Yana had been sexually assaulted. The girl was thrown into the pit naked from the waist down. They also told Lyudmila that her earrings had been removed and thrown near the body. Yana's family was inconsolable. At the girl's funeral, her friends were in tears, blaming themselves for not starting to look for her sooner. The incident was quickly reported on local and regional television. Footage showed the cordoned-off pit behind the school. Police US vehicles and the stern faces of the investigators were shown in the news. The city was buzzing. Girls were afraid to walk the streets alone, and all sorts of rumors were spreading by word of mouth. From rumors of a local maniac to a criminal passing through town. The investigators first focused on the theory that she was killed to cover up a sexual assault. As expected, they started combing through everything. Local residents with criminal records for similar offenses. One of the first serious suspects in the Yana Nefantova case was repeat offender Vitaly Ivanov, previously convicted of murder and robbery, a drunkard and troublemaker well known in the area. They found him quickly. Operational information confirmed that Ivanov was in Bogdanovich on the day of the incident. As often happens, they put a lot of pressure on the man and he broke down quite easily. Yeah, it was me. I was drunk, saw a lonely girl late at night, decided to rob her. I needed money for a bottle. I hit her, took her jewelry and money, and then sexually assaulted her while she was lying there and twitching. Ivanov confessed cheerfully. The investigators were encouraged. It seemed like the case was about to be solved. To confirm the confession, they conducted a crime scene reenactment. Right at the scene of the crime, on a cold November day with onlookers gathering behind a barrier, Ivanov, accompanied by the police, walked to the school and pointed toward the bushes. The investigator asked questions. Show where you saw her? Where did you approach from? Where exactly did you strike? And then something went wrong. Vitaly Ivanov started, as they say, to get confused in his testimony. He mixed up the timing and made up details on the spot. At first, he said he hit from the front with a brick. Then, that he threw Yana into the pit when she tried to run away. He couldn't remember what the girl was wearing. He didn't mention what happened to her phone. It was later found in a flower bed near the scene of the attack. When he was asked what the jewelry he took from the girl looked like, Ivanov started hesitating. There was some kind of ring, earrings.
I don't remember anymore.
The detectives exchanged glances. The experienced investigators immediately realized the man was lying. Either he is making things up to cover himself, or he is trying to repeat what he was told during interrogations. Later, Ivanov completely retracted his statements. At the next interrogation, he stated that he had confessed under pressure. They threatened me saying, "You'd better confess or things will be bad for you in prison," so I confessed. The case went to court, but the prosecution fell apart. Contradictory testimonies alone were not enough, and the investigators had no other evidence, no DNA, no fingerprints, no reliable witnesses. Ivanov still went to prison, but for a crime he actually committed. The investigator who had been handling Yana's case from the very beginning, meanwhile, retired. The investigation stalled again and was officially suspended due to the failure to identify the person to be held criminally responsible. Another notable suspect in the case was a certain Anatoly Kalugin, also a repeat offender with a serious criminal record. He had previously been convicted of taking a life and sexual assault. Kalugin was released just a week before Yana's death and was already wanted for new crimes. The man had already committed sexual assault and violent robbery. He was the most suitable suspect. Kalugin's modus operandi, the cruelty of stripping the victim naked after the sexual assault, partly matched what was found at the scene. Investigators seriously pursued this theory, but they were unable to find any direct evidence linking Kalugin to Nifantova's death. Again, no witnesses, no DNA, no fingerprints. The investigation has completely hit a dead end. They were out of suspects and no new leads appeared. The case was slowly gathering dust in the archives. And so, almost 6 years passed. Yana's parents didn't give up. In desperation, they decided to take extreme measures. They turned to psychics for help, just like many others before them. Yana's story made it to television. The segment on the show, Psychics Investigate, caused a sensation. Both psychics, invited to investigate one after another, saw the person who caused Yana's death. They both repeated almost the same thing in unison. The culprit should not be sought among the local alcoholics and out-of-town criminals, but among the girl's closest circle. The perpetrator is a man over 30, a former military man, married, with children. He had known Yana for a long time and very well. Possibly was a family friend or a childhood friend. There was a close, almost intimate relationship between them, which ended in tragedy. Yana's parents took in these words. Over 30, a former military man, married, a family friend, everything matched. In Lyudmila Mikhailovna and Maxim's minds it clicked. This was Andrey Ryzhkov, the very same Andrey who showed up at their house when Yana was only 8. Maxim's friend. A person they had known almost their entire lives. A veteran of the Chechen War, a factory worker, a family man, the one who once pushed little Yana on the swings and taught her how to skip stones on the water. Suddenly, everything started to fit together into a terrifying but logical picture. The more Yana's parents thought about the words of the psychics, the stronger their feeling grew that they were finally on the right track. One of the girl's friends suddenly remembered the missed calls and Yana's words about a persistent man who wouldn't leave her alone. As it turned out, she wasn't the only one to whom the girl had complained about the annoying suitor. Yana said he would call late at night or suddenly show up in the places where she would go, and he looked at her in a way that made her feel uneasy. He would just devour her with his eyes, her friends recalled. Back then, all of this was seen as something unpleasant, but not dangerous. Now Yana's complaints have taken on a completely different, sinister tone. The parents didn't hesitate. They immediately passed all this information to the investigative committee. And just in time. A person who was determined to see the investigation through to the end had just joined Yana's case. In 2014, people started talking about Yana Nefantova's death again. The case gained new momentum, partly due to the release of the TV program. The investigation was taken up by investigator Alexander Usov from the local department of the Investigative Committee of Russia, a relatively young, meticulous and persistent man who had only recently arrived in Bogdanovичи from another city. Usov immediately found the case interesting. It was high profile, had been unsolved for a long time, and was full of unknowns. According to some reports, he even worked on it partly in his free time. That's how much it captivated him. Usov started interviewing relatives, friends, former classmates, and everyone who had any contact with Yana in recent years all over again. And then people started talking about things they had previously kept quiet about, or things they simply hadn't considered important. Many confirmed, yes, Andrey Ryzhkov had indeed been hanging around Yana for many years. He never made any decisive moves, but it was clear from his behavior he liked Yana. As for Maxim Nefantov himself, however, he fiercely denied this possibility. Ryzhkov and I had been friends since we were 10 years old. Yana was like a little sister to him. He couldn't look at her any other way. But there were more and more witnesses. And one of them told something very important. But more on that later, because this raises a very interesting question. Why can a person live a double life and those around them don't notice anything at all? If we go by the investigator's version, Andrey Ryzhkov gives the impression of a person who really wanted to keep two incompatible lives at the same time. On one hand, there's family, a wife, a child, the respect of friends, and the reputation of a decent person. On the other hand, there was a relationship that couldn't be reconciled with that image. And instead of making a choice, according to the investigation, he tried to hold on to both worlds at once. Such people rarely see lying as something exceptional. Gradually, it becomes a way for them to maintain the life they're used to. They tell different people different things, adapt to the circumstances, and convince themselves more and more that if they just wait a little longer, the situation will somehow resolve itself. The most dangerous feature of this kind of thinking is avoiding the consequences. Instead of making a tough decision in time and honestly facing its consequences, a person puts off the problem until the very last moment. And when it can no longer be hidden, the person starts acting in a state of panic. But what's revealing is something else. According to the recollections of those around him, Ryzhkov participated in the search for the criminal for many years, supported Yana's family, went to the crime scene and discussed who could have done it. If the investigation's version is correct, this shows the ability to maintain a convincing outward appearance for a long time, even after a terrible event. It's important to emphasize here that it's not entirely clear what happened and how, but the story in any case shows how difficult it is to recognize a person, even for those close to them, when they're leading a double life. Very often, such a person appears completely ordinary, reliable, and calm. In fact, that's exactly how they intend to see him. By the way, I've already talked about people who are able to live a double life so well that those around them don't notice anything for years in my video and on my Telegram channel. The links are below the video. I'll leave additional materials there as well. So, the witness said the following. Once, Ryzhkov, after drinking heavily, let sleep in company. It was me who killed Yana Nifantova. I should be in prison for her. At the time, everyone took it as a very bad and dark joke from a drunk man. They laughed awkwardly and forgot about it. No one even considered that Ryzhkov might be telling the truth. But now, years later, that phrase sounded completely different. Usov listened carefully to every word. It seemed as if the witnesses had awakened from a long winter sleep. Everyone unanimously claimed that Ryzhkov liked Yana and that he was courting her. Usov decided to summon Ryzhkov for questioning so as not to beat around the bush. He started right away with a direct question. Yana Nefantova, was that you? Ryzhkov turned pale. Yana? I would never touch her in my life. What are you saying? Usov nodded calmly. We'll take a polygraph test. Ryzhkov couldn't refuse anymore. During the test, feeling depressed and nervous, he couldn't stand it and confessed. Yes, it's all true. I killed Yana. The story he told was like the plot of a Russian melodrama. Ryzhkov confessed to the investigator that he really did fall in love with his friend's younger sister when she grew up. The age difference was significant, and he tried to forget her and even got married to get Yana out of his mind. But the girl became a frequent guest in their home, helped his wife and took care of the child. Ryzhkov understood that it was wrong, that the girl was only 18 and he was married with a small child, but he couldn't do anything about it. He was drawn to her. Maybe he even loved her. They started communicating behind Andrey's wife's back, at first rarely, then more and more often. They exchanged messages and called each other. And when Yana came home, they always found time to meet. Gradually, their friendship turned into something more. They crossed the line. They started an affair. Ryzhkov felt good with Yana, but apparently not good enough to break up his family. He loved his child very much and was afraid of losing them if everything came out. That's why he begged Yana to keep everything strictly secret. At first, the girl agreed. The relationship remained a secret even from her closest friends. Yana lied to them when she said that Ryzhkov was bothering her and stalking her. In reality, both of them were deeply entangled in this web of forbidden meetings, secrecy, and constant lies. Over time, it became unbearable for the proud and headstrong Yana. She was tired of lying to her friends, tired of being a secret, tired of feeling like she was second best. During one of his visits, she told him firmly, "That's it, enough, I don't want to hide anymore. Either you tell your wife or it's over between us." For Ryzhkov, these words were a blow. He was horrified. If his wife finds out, there will be a huge scandal, a divorce and disgrace throughout the whole town. Most likely, she will take their daughter and he will lose the most precious thing he has. His family, reputation and peaceful life, all of it could collapse in a single moment. He begged Yana not to do this. But the girl's patience was running out. On that day, November 11, 2006, Yana came to Bogdanovich not only to meet with friends and parents. She also hoped to meet with Andrey. They didn't have a specific agreement to meet that day. Ryzhkov was hanging out with friends, drinking. When the group split up, he said he went to look for his wife, who had disappeared somewhere. He wandered around the city in the evening, already quite drunk. Near the post office building, he happened to notice a familiar figure. Yana was walking toward the city center, beautiful and confident, in a warm jacket with her hair down. Ryzhkov caught up with her. "You look good," he said with a slight smile. "Where are you going?" They started talking. The conversation turned out to be strange and awkward. Ryzhkov supposedly suggested to Yana that they look for his wife together. Maybe we'll see her somewhere. The girl didn't refuse. They walked side by side down a poorly lit street. Ahead, the silhouette of a school appeared. And then Yana lost her patience. "Aren't you ashamed?" she snapped. "You're asking me to help you look for your wife? How can you even look her in the eye after everything?" Ryzhkov tensed up instantly. He understood what she was getting at. "Better not start, Yana," he warned her right away. But the girl couldn't be stopped anymore. The resentment and humiliation that had built up over months burst out. "No, I will. Once we find your wife, I'll tell her everything myself." Enough hiding, she quickened her pace. Ryzhkov rushed after her, grabbed her by the hand, trying to calm her down. But Yana seemed to have lost control. She broke free and shouted that she no longer intended to be his plaything. "I want a normal relationship. I'm tired of being a secret. I'll tell her everything, you hear me?" Ryzhkov tried to calm her down, but the alcohol and panic had done their job. He couldn't take it and hit the girl in the face. He misjudged his strength. Yana didn't just recoil, she fell, clutching her cheek. A mix of pain and rage instantly flashed in her eyes. "How dare you? No one has ever laid a hand on me in my life. I'll report you to the police, do you understand?" She started to get up. Ryzhkov looked around in panic. There was a heavy stone lying on the ground nearby. He grabbed it and, almost without thinking, attacked the girl. Ryzhkov struck Yana on the temple. A strong man, hardened, a military man. The very first blow was so powerful that it broke the girl's skull. The second shattered the bones and damaged her brain. Yana collapsed heavily to the ground. White bones appeared in the wound. Blood instantly soaked her dark hair. Ryzhkov froze. "Yana! Yana!" he called out in a voice hoarse from excitement and now horror, still holding the stone in his hand. But the girl was already in agony. After a few minutes, Ryzhkov realized that a corpse was lying in front of him. His gaze darted around in panic. What should he do? Where could he hide the body? How could he cover his tracks? An inner voice suggested he needed to stage a different crime. Robbery, sexual assault. Ryzhkov quickly pulled down Yana's pants and underwear. His hands were shaking. The girl was still warm, and only her eyes stared with a lifeless gaze, and there was a deep wound gaping on her head. He also took the necklace, earrings, and phone with him. Later, he threw the phone far into the bushes. As for the earrings and necklace, he flushed them down the toilet at home. No one even suspected him when Yana's body was found. A family friend, an older companion. Could he really have done something like that to Maxim's younger sister? The girl's relatives were shocked after such a confession. It turned out that the psychics were right. The criminal really was very close. Yana's mother, Lyudmila, was especially inconsolable. "He was almost like a son to me, you understand? After my daughter's death, I went outside and saw Andrey sitting on the bench. I couldn't take it, I started crying, and he tried to comfort me. He always called me Aunt Luda. My friends would shake their heads. He often told his brother, we'll find that monster and deal with him ourselves. The mildest thing Ryzhkov said about the criminal was, we'll put him in the trunk and take him to the woods. Maniacs often return to the scene of the crime, that's why we sometimes go there. In the evening to the school to check if there's any suspicious person hanging around." So, Ryzhkov never missed a single one of those trips. He was always discussing who could have done it. He turned out to be such a disgusting and two-faced person. But it's impossible that Yana and Ryzhkov had an affair. The version that Yana demanded Andrey get a divorce and threatened to tell his wife everything is even more unbelievable. She would never destroy her friend's family. Andrey's wife supported Yana after she broke up with her boyfriend. They were friends, you understand? She even took care of their daughter. No, Yana isn't like that. As often happens, almost the very next day after his confession statement, Ryzhkov recanted it. During the interrogation in the presence of a lawyer, he stated that he gave his confession under pressure. After the polygraph interrogation, they cornered me. They said everything was already decided, and even Yana's relatives knew the truth. So it's better to write it, or they'll work me over. According to Ryzhkov, he had to rewrite his confession several times so that it matched the version that suited the investigation. He wrote under video surveillance: "That day I really was drinking with my coworkers, but I didn't go anywhere else. I spent the evening with them and then went home." Ryzhkov explained in response to the question about what he was actually doing on November 11. They questioned his coworkers. They glanced at each other and shrugged. "We don't remember. Maybe we did drink. It's been almost 8 years. How could you possibly remember now?" they said in unison. Nevertheless, the investigation had confessions of guilt from Andrey Ryzhkov and the findings of the forensic expert, which apparently still confirm his guilt. Deputy head of the Bogdanovich Inter-District Investigative Department of the Investigative Committee of the Russian Federation for the Sverdlovsk region, Sergei Noskov, sent the case to court. And then something happened that no one expected. In court, Ryzhkov's confession began to fall apart. The judge carefully studied the case materials and noticed a serious discrepancy between what Ryzhkov wrote in his confession and the actual circumstances of the crime. First, Ryzhkov claimed that he took the gold jewelry with him. However, the necklace remained on Yana's neck and the earrings were found next to the body. Second, he said that he only pulled down the girl's pants and underwear, staging a sexual assault. In reality, the body was completely undressed below the waist. There was no underwear, tights, pants, or even socks. Like Ivanov, Ryzhkov got confused in the details and made things up in his confession to hide his lack of knowledge of the facts. The judge stated the following: "An initial confession of guilt by itself, if not supported by a body of other irrefutable evidence, is not sufficient to render a guilty verdict." In the end, Andrey Ryzhkov was acquitted. He was released right in the courtroom and walked free to the outraged cries of Yana's relatives. Yana's parents were in shock and furious. Lyudmila Nefantova couldn't hold back her tears and anger. The investigators who brought the case to court were also outraged. They believed they had gathered enough evidence to convict Ryzhkov and that the court was too picky and generally unfair. Lyudmila tried to appeal the verdict, wrote complaints, insisted that Ryzhkov was guilty, but the appeal was rejected. The higher courts upheld the decision. Andrey Ryzhkov remained free. He returned to his life, work, family, and everyday affairs. And the case of the death of Yana Nefantova remains unsolved to this day. Officially, there are no suspects. Yana's parents and her brother, however, are sure that Ryzhkov is a criminal, and he just got lucky to get away with it. And what do you think about this case? Leave your comments, like or dislike, and check out Boosty. There are already several interesting pieces of exclusive content there. Some can be watched for free, others require a subscription. For example, there's the scariest video on the Strashno Strashnota channel, which can't even be published on YouTube. There are the most unusual ways to die. There's also a test: are you a maniac or already a suspect? There are 10 ways to quickly calm down when needed. And there's a solid piece with myths and facts about what a love for true crime does to people. Go ahead, use it, become part of our community. The links are below the video, and also check out other videos on the channel. They come out even though you don't always get notifications about them. And that's the end of it. And whoever listened all the way to this point will buy something they need next week and for less than they expected.